Hello everyone. Today we're learning from Mציעא Daf Zayin. So we're going to start from three lines down. Omar le Rav Acha medifte Ravina. So we learned on Daf Vavam base a case of sfeikos that you go into the pen and you give maestros on them. Rashi already explained what the Gemara is going to explain now. What type of sfeikos are we talking about? So says the Gemara, Rav Acha medifte asked Ravina, what type of sfeikos are we talking about? Are we talking about sofek bechor, that you have a firstborn sheep and you're not sure if it's firstborn or not, so that's a sofek, and then you're allowed to give meiser? It can't be, because it said in the pasuk about meiser, kodesh, it shall be kodesh, and we learn that it shall be now from now onwards, not that's already kodesh, and this one is sofek already kodesh. So how could you give a meiser on it? Can't be. Doesn't make sense. So he said, it must be talking about sofek pidyon peter chamor, that someone had a firstborn donkey and he's not sure if it's firstborn, so he doesn't need to give it to the kohen like we said. It stays by the Yisrael. But on the other hand, it's also begizav avoida. It's also ba'ano until, because it's sofek kodesh. So what do you do? So he's mafresh on that a sheep, and that sheep stays by him because we said amoitzi mechaver l'raya, and that sofek that maybe belongs to the kohen because it's a peter chamor, the firstborn donkey, so you have to give a kohen a sheep instead. But you could keep it because it's only sofek. But mitzat sheni, this sheep doesn't have any kedusha to it because it's meant to belong to the kohen as a chulindika animal, so therefore there's no problem of kodesh v'loisha kvar kodesh kvar. And like Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabba Baravua, that if Yisrael has 10 sofek peter chamor, so he's mafresh on each one a sheep, and then he has 10 sheep, and on those 10 sheep he has to be maisa, and he keeps it to himself because it's only a sofek and a moitzi mechaver all over Aryeh. So now the Gemara goes back and asks, so what is the din about the bathhouse? We had the bathhouse that two people were fighting over it, and we don't know who belongs to, and one of them stood up and said, I want to be magdishit. So the Rabbanan didn't know what to do. If they could use a bathhouse, does it become kodesh or doesn't become kodesh? So the Gemara wants to know what's the din about that bathhouse. So the Gemara, come and listen. There was such a story, and he came in front of Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda brought him in front of Rav Huna to ask Rav Huna what's the din, and he paskened the din with the story of Nachman, with the din of Rav Nachman. The Rav Nachman said, any money that you can't be moitzi b'dayonim, that means you don't have any way to prove it's yours in Bezdin, in court. If you make it kodesh, it's not kodesh because it's not yours. And therefore, by this bathhouse that they were fighting over, none of them had the raya that was his, they could be moitzed b'dayonim. And therefore, the hekdesh is not chal and you're allowed to use a bathhouse. It says the Gemara, it's mashma that if you could be moitzed b'dayonim, if you makdish it, even though you didn't be moitzed b'dayonim yet, it's kodesh already. How did that make sense? Rabbi Yochanan said that if Reuven stole from Shimon an item, and Shimon didn't be misyayish, so they both can't be makdishit. Why not? Reuven, the Ganev, can't do it because it's not his. Shimon was not misyayish yet, and the Shimon that belongs to him who could do it, you'd think. No, he also can't be makdish because it's not his reshus, it's not his possession, and the guy's Shimon could go to Bezin and be Tovei Reuven and get it out of Reuven. And afilu we say that it's not considered Bershusay until he does so. So how are we saying over here that if you could be moitzed b'dayonim, you could be makdish already? It doesn't make sense of Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, no. Do you think that we're talking about a bathhouse that's metaltalin, that was like a big bath that you could move from place to place, and therefore if Reuven stole it, it's not my reshus, and the only way I could get it back is al pi dayonim with court, then enochanami you can't be makdish because of the din of Rabbi Yochanan. because it's not considered Bereshusah, and he can't be Makdesha until you take it out in court. But over here, the bathhouse is talking about was a fixed bathhouse. It was like karka. And the din is with karka in exelis. So even if someone stole my karka, it doesn't have any kinyonig neva in the field. And even I can't go in the field now, because if I come there, he'll shoo me out. But because it really belongs to me, if I magdish it, even if I wasn't moitzid b'day on him, the kedusha's chal, because whatever it is, it's mine. And it's a big difference between metaltilim and karka. Metaltilim, that there is a kinning neva on it, so it's already non marishus. When someone steals away from me, I can't be makdish until I be moitzid b'day on him. But karka, even if it's stolen from me, I could be makdish it, and the hekdesh will be chal. Said the Gemara, a new thing. Rav Tachlifta Bar Marava learned to Brisa in front of Ravo that two people are dukim betalis, meaning that they're holding a talis. One's, let's say, holding a quarter of the talis, and the other one's holding the whole half of the talis underneath his hands, literally, underneath his hands. Each one takes the part that's underneath his hands. I mean, this guy takes a quarter, this takes half, and the rest, you split. Not like the Mishnah we're going to see in a second that we said he splits the whole talis. No, first we give each one how much is underneath his hands, in his hands literally, and the rest we choylek. So Rav Avua was over there, and he pointed up, and he said, yeah, you're right, you split up, but b'shvua, you need to make the rest that you do chalukah on, you need to make a shvua over it, like in the Mishnah that the chalukah is with a shvua. Says the Gemara, our Mishnah that says that you split the whole talis into half, and we didn't say that each one gets what's underneath his hands. What's the difference? Why over here we're saying that what's underneath his hands in the Brisa it says it belongs to him, and only the rest you choylek, and the Mishnah said we choylek the whole thing. Says Rav Papa, the Mishnah is talking about where they're holding the berkarkashta. They're holding the edges of the talis. Reuven's holding one edge of the talis, and Shimon's holding the other edge of the talis. So what's underneath their hands is not really significant. It doesn't really have any value. So therefore, all the rest, the Mishnah says, Cholkim b'shvua. Over here in the Brisa, where one's holding the talis himself underneath his hand, and the other one's holding the other part of the talis underneath the hand. So whatever's underneath his hand, you give it to him, and the rest, you split b'shvua, and there's no contradiction between the Mishnah and the Brisa. Says Rav Misharshia, from this we could see that we know there is such a thing, a kinyan suda, that we learn it from Rus, that someone could be magbia a piece of cloth, and with that be makne something else to the other person, called kinyan suda. So says Rav Misharshia, from this we say that each one gets what's underneath his hands. So if someone took a suda, and he held three, and it has to be the size of 3 on 3 fingers, and he held, so let's say this was a soda, and he held 3 on 3 fingers, enough of the amount that you could do a soda, even though they doesn't pick up the rest of the soda, only the part that's in his hand, that's 3 on 3. Afilu the kinyan soda works. Like we see over here that all what's underneath his hand he keeps, so also the soda he'll keep all what's underneath the kinyan's chal, because it's as if he did a kinyan on this part of the suda, even that the rest is still on the floor because it's underneath his hands. Because it says in the pasuk, "V'nosan lere'eyu," it's talking about over there Rus and Boyaz, etc. And since we say that what's under your hands becomes yours, so that's called an esina. Says the Gemara on why that difference from the din of Rav Chizda. The Rav Chizda said that if a man gave a get to his woman, to his wife, and he gave her the full get, and there is a string that's connected to this get, and if the husband pulls a string, he'll manage to grab the get off the woman. So Rav Chizda said the din is she's no megreshes. Depends if she could pull it and it comes back to him, so she's no megreshes, and if not, she's megreshes. So l'chora, if what we're saying here, that whatever's underneath you in your hand is already yours, so l'chora, the get is in the woman's hand. It should be hers. Why should she not be megreshes? What do we care that the man could pull it back to him? On that, the Gemara says a teretz. I'll tell you the difference. By gerushin, by a get, by a divorce, there is a special din that you need krisus. Krisus means separation. And to have separation, it needs to be a full separation. And if the man could pull this piece of string that's connected to this divorce document, so it's not called a proper separation between the man and the woman, and therefore the document doesn't work. The get's not chal, and therefore she's not megureshes. But that's a special din by get. They need krisus. But normally, wherever something is in someone's hand, that part that's in his hands is his. Says Rava, we learned in our Mishnah that if two people come with a talis to Bezdin and they argue, they split, they make a shvur, etc. Says Rava, if it was a golden talis, also cholkim. And that the Gemara asks the obvious question. That's obvious, pshita. Obviously cholkim. Why should it be any different? Says the Gemara, no, it's talking about that the gold is in between, in middle. So therefore, it's a bigger chiddush how we split the gold into half. Says the Gemara, that's also pshita. Obviously, we said you split it, so obviously you're going to split the gold. What's the chiddush? Says the Gemara, no, I'll tell you what we're talking about. We're talking about that the gold is closer to Reuven, or closer to Shimon, closer to one of them. So you might have thought that the one who's closer, let's say it's closer to Reuven could tell Shimon, okay, let's split this talis into half. So let's say the talis is a meter long, the gold is after 25 centimeters closer to Reuven. So let's split it exactly in half, Reuven says. After 550 centimeters, we'll take a nice ruler with the scissors and cut it into half, and I'll keep half the talis with the gold, and you'll keep the other half without the gold. On that, Rav is saying, Chiddush no cholkim, that the other one will say, who said, why are you so short? Split it after 50 centimeters in the length. Let's split it to the width of the talis. And let's say the width is 50 centimeters, 25 centimeters in middle, we'll cut it, and therefore each one gets half the gold. And therefore, basically, Rav is saying, Chiddush, if there's more value in this talis towards one of them, he doesn't get more value when we split. Rabbanon learned. It's a new sugya that's connecting to our sugya. So we learned that two people came to Bezdin with a talis, and Reuven says, I found it. Shimon said, I found it. So in the Brayse it says such a case. Two people, a malva, someone who lent money to someone, and the borrower or the loiva, come to Bezdin holding the star. So let's say Reuven gave money to Shimon, and Shimon owes, let's say, 100. And Shimon owes Reuven now 100 pounds. And they come to Bezdin holding the shtar, the document of the loan. And it says in it that Shimon owes Reuven 100 pounds. And they both holding on to this document. Reuven says, it's all mine. It fell from me and I found it now. And Shimon still owes me 100 pounds. And Shimon says, no, I paid you off. And I paid you off, and the shtar is mine, and I don't owe you a penny. So it says in the Brisa, the first shitta is Rebbe, and Rebbe says they skayim a shtar b'choismov, meaning you have to check that it's a good shtar, see on this document who is written, who testified, who are the eidim, who are the witnesses. Go check with them that it was a good document, and once they say it's a good document, the way the Gemara understands now, we'll give it all to the Malva, we'll give it all to Reuven. And Shimon will have to pay the whole 100 pounds. The Gemara's going to ask on that in a second, on this whole brisa. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, no, you split it. Shimon only has to pay 50, and not the full amount, but Reuven does get his 50. Keep the price and says, if nofalaya dayan, meaning if the way we understand it now, we'll see soon it means a bit different. That the dayan found it, not the malve or the loive found it. The dayan, the judge of Bezdin in town, found this document, the shtar. So it says, lo yotzia ilomis. Tanekama Chachamim say, it doesn't say the name, you should leave it by him, he shouldn't give it back ever. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, Aryeh b'cheskosoi means it's a good star, and therefore you should give it back to the malve, to Reuven. It says that Shimon owes Reuven £100, give it back to Reuven. Now the Gemara is going to explain this brisa to understand it better. So we're starting with the beginning. We said that Rebbe holds that Reuven and Shimon are holding this document. We go, we find the witnesses, we check that this is a good document, and then we give it back. And the Gemara asks, does that mean that the Malve, once it's a good document, he'll give it back all to Reuven, to the Malve, and he'll claim the whole £100? What, does Rebbe not hold of our Mishnah that when two people are holding a talis, you split it half off? So here, the Loiv is also holding on to this document. He should also deserve to get 50. They should split a 50-50 if the document's of £100, so you should only have to pay 50. Why is he saying that once you go to the witnesses, you give it all to the Malve? Says Rav, I'll explain you in the name of Rav Nachman. If this document is talking about where it's a valid document, mikuya means that we have a sign from the court saying that we checked this document and it's a valid document, and we checked the witnesses and they said, yes, we signed and we saw this transaction happen of the loan, then no one argues. Everyone holds that then this document we know is a valid document. Reuven and Shimon holding on it. Like a talis, you split 50-50. So the document you also split 50-50, and therefore Shimon pays 50 and Reuven gets 50. And the other 50 Shimon does not have to pay. That's not what the Brisa was talking about. Where was the Brisa talking about where it's a document that doesn't have any sign on it from the court saying that this is a good document? So Rebbe holds that if the loiva, if the borrower, the one who borrowed the money, agrees that this is a good document, in general, and a document of a loan, so the malve, even though that the loiva agrees, he still needs to make sure that it's correct and go to Beis Din and bring his witnesses to say that it's a good shtar. And therefore, where Rebbe said Iskayim Ashtar B'Choysav means that the malva needs to bring the witnesses to say this is a good document. And if he does, not that he gets everything, he won't get the whole loan, he'll only get half the loan. He'll only get 50% of what's written in the shtar. And we're going to explain. Because this shtar, this document is just a piece of paper, right? It just says in it that Reuven is owed by Shimon £100. It's a piece of paper. What's making it? What makes us trust this document? Who's making us know that this document's a good document? The borrower, Shimon, because he's saying, yeah, this is a good shtar, but I paid off. But without that, who said maybe someone just faked this, forged this shtar, this document? How do I know that? How do I know that it's a good document? So because the loiva said, oh, I paid off, that means he agrees that was a good document, but he's also saying I paid off. And therefore, you only believe him because you only know it's a good document because he said so, but he also said he paid off, so you trust him about everything. And therefore, if the malve won't prove that this is a good document from his own, he doesn't get anything. But if he'll prove that it's a good document, then it's now a good document, and now they're both holding on to a good document, so 50-50. That's Shittas Rebbe. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds, no. If the loiva, the borrower, agrees that it's a good document, that's it. Now we know it's a good document. Now he's saying he paid off, but look, the shtar is also in the hands of Reuven. You can't say it's paid off when the document's in the hands of the malve. So therefore, even if it's not mikuyim, even if there's no sign on it saying that this is a document that's being checked in court and we know it's a good document, because the borrower agrees that it's a good document, that's good enough for us. And even though he says he paid off, but the malva is holding on to the shtar 50, half of it he's holding, and therefore, even without the malva bringing the witnesses and saying this is a good shtar, we say he gets 50, and that's a machloike. So it's a shtar that's not mikuyim, And Rebbe holds only if the malva is mekayim it, then he's going to get 50. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds even without the malva being mekayim it, that the loive agrees that was a good document, it's enough for us, and therefore the malva will get 50. Says the Gemara, we learned in this brisa before the end of the brisa, it says if the judge of the dayan of town or wherever the dayan found it, he should keep it by himself. He shouldn't give it back, not to the malva, not to Reuven, and not to loive the Shimon. Says the Gemara, why is a dayan any different? Why does a judge have a different din when he finds a document of a loan? L'chora, everyone who found this document has the same din. Wherever the din should be by the judge, it should be by a normal person who's not the malva and loiva. Says Rava, this is pshat in the brisa. It doesn't mean that the dayan found it. It means if someone else, not the loiva and malva, found a star, and what type of star that's been by the dayan, it doesn't mean that the dayan found it. It means it's been by the dayan. And what does it mean that it's been by the dayan? That it's mekuyim, that there is a sign, a signature, saying that Bezdin so-and-so saw and checked the witnesses and said, this is a good star, this is a good document. So we know this is a good document. So the din is, Tanakama holds, Chacham holds, lo yotzio oilomis. You should not give it back. And the chiddush is not only if it doesn't have the sign of the dayan, so for sure you shouldn't give it back, because maybe this transaction never happened. Maybe they wrote a document because they were planning to do a loan, and at the end the loan never happened. But even if we know that the loan happened, so why shouldn't you give it back to the malva? No, you shouldn't give it back to the malva. Why not? Because we're choishesh, maybe the loan paid back already this loan, and therefore this document has no value anymore, even though we know it had value in the past because it has a henpek. But maybe the loive paid off already, and therefore the person who finds such a star, even though there has a sign on it that was by a dayan, you should still not give it back to anyone. And Rabbi Yossi in the brisa, he argues. He says, Aryeh b'cheskosoi. And we're not choishesh for piron. And therefore you should give it back to the malva. We know that this document's a good document. It has a sign from the dayan. So therefore we know it happened. We give it back to the malva. We give it back to Reuven. Because Rabbi Yossi's svara is, the svara of Lechashinu Puron is, why we not choishes they paid back? Because if you paid back, the first thing you do, you take that document and tear it into half, into 4 and into 8, and burn it up. If the document's still existing, it means that the loiva never paid back, and therefore we can give it back to the mal. Okay, so now we understand the brisa very well. The Reish is talking about where it's not mekuyim, the Sefer is talking about where it's mekuyim, and we have here two different machloikises about it. The Gemara asks the kasha now. Is it so that Rabbi Yossi is not choishesh for paying back? That Rabbi Yossi says that Aryeh b'cheskosoi you should give it back? We learned in the brisa. What did we learn in the brisa? Someone found a shtar ksuva, and a shtar ksuva is a basically saying how much the husband owes his wife if he dies or if he divorces her. So it's basically like a loan document type of thing, and you have to pay the loan if you die, the husband dies, or if he divorces his wife. So someone found a ksuva in the market. So if the husband agrees that he never paid the ksuva yet, you should give it back to the woman. And if the Baal doesn't agree, he says, no, I paid it off already, you shouldn't give it back, not to the husband to tear it up, and not to the woman who could sue the husband with it. That's Chachomim. It says, it doesn't say who it is, but we'll see it's Chachomim. And that means they hold that if he admits, okay, that's very simple, you give it back to the woman because they all agree. But if he doesn't agree, they're arguing about it, we're choishesh for piron, and therefore we don't give it back not to the husband and not to the wife. Rabbi Yossi says, depends. If she's still married, so therefore such a loan of ksuva you never pay when you're still married. Therefore, you should give it back to the woman because it can't be he paid it off yet, because it's not yet the time to pay off. Because the time to pay off is only when they're not married anymore. But if she's a widow or she's divorced, you should not give it back not to the husband and not to the woman. Why not? Why should you not give it back? Because Because we're choishesh lepiron, we're choishesh the husband paid back already. So the Gemara is asking a kasha. Before Rabbi Yossi said the shtar b'chizkosa and you give it back to the malveh, and over here we say you don't give it back not to the husband and not to the wife. That means you don't give it back to the malveh, to the woman who's a malveh, who's owed the money. Why not? Because you are choishesh lepiron. So decide, Rabbi Yossi, are you choishesh lepiron or not choishesh lepiron? Says the Gemara, Teretz Eipuch. I'll turn over the shitta in the brisa by us in Baba Mציעא that we're talking about, not by ksuva, by a normal document of a loan. I'll turn over and I'll say, if a fella adayin, if it's a shtar that's mekuyim, you should not give it back to anyone. Divrei Rabbi Yossi, before that was Chachamim, now we're saying that's Rabbi Yossi because Rabbi Yossi is choishesh lepiron. And then Chachamim say, no, Aryeh b'chizkosoi, because we are not choishesh lepiron. So we answered Rabbi Yossi, we saw by Ksuva Rabbi Yossi is choishesh lepiron, by us not, so we turned over the shitta. Ask the Gemara, if so, what did you help? It's a kasha de Rabbanon. Very good, you solved Rabbi Yossi, but now you're saying then, by us in the Brisa, Rabbanon hold what? That we're not choishesh lepiron, but over here by Ksuvas, what does it say? By here in Ksuvas it says, you are choishesh lepiron, in Shittas Rabbanon. So you have a steer Rabbanon, what did you gain? You solved one issue, you caused a different issue. Said the Gemara, a new teretz, a continuation of a teretz. That the whole brisa of that's talking about shtar ksuva that we asked the kasha to us about a normal document, it's all Rabbi Yossi, and this is how you meant to read it. It's not two shittis. If the husband doesn't admit, you should not give it back, not to him and not to her, because we are choishesh lepiron, and therefore, and this is Rabbi Yossi, and it fits in with the Rabbi Yossi that we turned over in the brisa before that is choishesh lepiron. And Rabbi Yossi continues, when is that talking about in a case where she's a widow or she's divorced? But if she's underneath the husband, she's still married, you should give it back to the woman. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi holds, if she's still married, you should give it back to the woman, because it doesn't make sense that he paid off already, because she's still married. It's not yet the time to pay off. But if she's divorced or if she's a widow, you should not give it back to any of them, because we're choishesh lepiron, and therefore we have no kashas, because Rabbi Yossi is choishesh lepiron, and in the brisa that we brought before, we turned it over, and Rabbi Yossi is also choishesh lepiron, and therefore we answered our kasha. Our Papa says a new teretz. No. Really don't turn over Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanon. Really Rabbanon and Rabbi Yossi in the brisa of the shtar, Rabbi Yossi says we're not choishesh lepiron, and Rabbanon says we are choishesh lepiron. So l'chera Rabbanon is not shver, because Rabbanon also in the brisa of Ksuva hold you are choishesh lepiron, and in the Ksuva and the brisa of shtar also choishesh lepiron. All l'chera we have a kasha in Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi that in the brisa of shtar, Rabbi Yossi says that we are choishesh, we are not choishesh lepiron. And over here by Ksuva we say you don't give it after divorce, you don't give it back to any of them because you are choishesh lepiron. It says Rabbi Yossi that Rabbi Yossi says Rav Papa that Rabbi Yossi in the brisa was talking about lefi shittas Rabbanon, and this is what Rabbi Yossi was telling. Lefi what I hold that we're not choishesh lepiron, even if she's a widow and she's divorced, you should give it back. We're not choishesh she paid off, because the ksuva still exists, because if you'd pay off, you'd tear it up straight away. So therefore, I hold that you should give it back to the woman, even after divorce. But you're a bono, who are choishesh lepiron, okay, I understand that, but at least admit to me that in a case where she's not divorced and she's still married, then for sure you should give it back to the woman, because mehechetesa, the husband paid this ksuva. It's not time yet to pay ksuva. So why should you not give it back to the woman? At least admit, very good, in a normal document, you're choishesh, maybe he paid back after divorce, you're also choishesh. But over here, it's not paid time yet. So why don't you admit to me that in such a case, where she's still married, you should give it back straight to the woman? And Rabbanon told Rabbi Yossi, no. I'm choishesh shema tzrori atfasa. Tzrori atfasa means maybe when they're still married, the husband gave the woman dedicated money for this document, for this ksuva. And he said, this money that I'm putting in that safe, is for you. And if I divorce you, just go to the safe and take the money. And if I die, you don't have to come to my Yerushim and say, oh, where's my ksuva? You could just go to the safe and take it. And therefore, even when a person's married, maybe you already paid this ksuva, you dedicated money for that, and he gave it to her already. So therefore, we're still choishesh, and therefore we can't give back the ksuva to the woman, even if she's still married, because we're choishesh, she got paid already. Sorry, atfasa. Ravina says a new teretz how to answer the stira between Rabbi Yossi and the Brisa and the two Brisas. Really, you do turn over Rabbi Yossi and the Brisa of shtar bayas. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi says you are choishesh lepiron. Right? And Rabbanon in the Brisa says you're not choishesh lepiron. Or lechora, it's a kasher the Rabbanon or the Rabbanon, because in the Brisa of shtar they say you're not choishesh lepiron, and the shtar in the Brisa of ksuva they say you are choishesh lepiron. I'll tell you what's pshat of Rabbanon. Really, Rabbanon hold you know choishesh lepiron. But I'll tell you by ksuva why they say lo yachzir lo lezeh v'lo lezeh. It's a special din by ksuvas, because we're choishesh that maybe he gave two ksuvas, and Rabbi Yossi is not choishesh for two ksuvas, meaning that the husband. What happened was the husband gave a woman he married. He gave a nice ksuva, and they lost the ksuva. And there is a issa to live with a woman if you don't have a ksuva. So he quickly went and wrote another ksuva. And now you found this ksuva, and the husband says, the husband's not saying, I paid back already. The husband's saying, I gave her another ksuva. And therefore, if you give her now back this ksuva to the woman, even though that we not normally choishesh lepiron, not that's what we choishesh for over here. We choishesh, I gave already a ksuva, so if you give her two ksuvas, she'll sue me twice, or sue me and my Yerushim again. And therefore, don't give it back to her. And therefore, you don't give it back. Not because we're choishesh she paid back. Really, Rabbanon hold you not choishesh liproin. If a person pays back, he tears off the shtar straight away. But in ksuva, there's a special chashash. They wrote another ksuva. By alvo, if the malva goes to the loiva and says, I lost the shtar that you owe me $1 million, the loiva is going to tell him, oh, very nice to know about this. I'm not writing you another shtar. But by ksuva, the husband's mechuyev to write another ksuva, because you're not allowed to live without a ksuva. So therefore, we're choishesh for that. And Rabbi Yossi is not choishesh for that. And therefore, it fits in very good. There's no stira between Rabbanon and Rabbanon, because by ksuva is a special chashash that's not relevant by all shtaris. Says Rabbi Loza, the machlokes in the Mishnah, the machlokes that we said on Amud Aleph about, we said that you say achloiku. If Reuven and Shimon are holding a shtar that says that Shimon owes Reuven £100, and we said that it's split off and Shimon only has to pay 50 when it's mekuyim, that's talking about where they're both holding the toifes and they're both holding the toiref. So the toifes is like in Hebrew, tofes. It means like a fixed a fixed part in the document of a loan, in the shtar of a loan, that's fixed, that you always write the same thing, the same lashon. It's not changed by person to person. And the toref is like someone who hunts. Toref Yosef. It's the juice in it, the juice in the document where it says the time when the loan happened. And soon in the Gemara a bit further down, we can understand what's the difference between them. So Rabbi Loza says, when do you split 50-50? When they're both holding the toifes, or they're both holding the turf. But if one of them's holding the toifes and one of them's holding the turf, the one who holds the toifes gets a toifes and the other one gets a turf. And we're going to see later on what's the significant difference between it. But I mean, it's like Shnayim Adukim B'shtar that we said there's two people who are in the talis who are grabbing onto it, not only on the edges, that what's under their hands they get. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you always split. And the Gemara understands it means even if one's holding the toifes and one's holding the turf. Ask the Gemara, if that's so, even if one's holding the toifes and one holding the turf, we learned in the Brisa that if it's under his hand, then noitil ad mokim shiodei magas, then noitil ad mokim shiodei magas. If it's in your hands, a certain amount of the garment, you get that part first, and then you split the rest. So also here with the shtar, you should do the same. Says the Gemara, no, we're talking about that the Torif, that they're not holding both, one's holding the Torif and one's holding the Toifes. When we said Loilim Yachloiku, it means that the Torif, the valuable part of the star, is in the middle. Says the Gemara, if so, what do you need to tell me? We know they Yachloiku, that's what we said on Amud Aleph, they Yachloiku if they're both holding it. Why are you Mechadish? Says the Gemara, the Chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan is like the Chiddush of Rava about a talis, that's a golden talis, that the Torif, the valuable part, is closer to one of them. You might have thought that he could say, okay, let's split it bang in the middle between us, and therefore the valuable part is mine. Kamashmalan, the other one says, why did he split it this way? Let's split it the other way, and therefore 50-50. And the Chiddush is exactly like L'chora, exactly like a talis muzeves, that you can't split, one can't decide what side to cut it. So it comes out, Rashi explains, and it comes out that really Rabbi Loza and Rabbi Yochanan are not cholik. Rabbi Loza is saying one din, if one's holding the Toifus and one's holding the Torif, each one gets what's underneath his hands. And Rabbi Yochanan is saying that if it's closer to one of them, you don't say the din of Rabbi Loza, but they both agree. Okay. So Rav Acha Midifta asked Ravina, Lefi Rabbi Loza, that we said that if one's holding the Torif and one's holding the Toifus, each one gets what's underneath his hands. What are we talking about? What do we care between the Toifus and the Torif? What do we care about the difference that one has the time in it and one doesn't have the time in it? Are we talking about, does he need this document to use as a bottle stopper? Does he need it for a piece of paper to put on top of his pot that the ants shouldn't come in? What's the whole value of this document? Is the loan document, the value of the money. Who cares the Toifus of Torif? What's the difference? So he told him, yeah, it doesn't mean over here to split, to cut off the piece of the Torif and he'll get that piece and the other person will get the piece of the Toifus. No, that's what it doesn't mean. It means for the value of it. And what's the value of it? That a star that has in its time is a better star. And the reason why is because a star, if Reuven, it says a document that Shimon owes him £100 and Shimon has no money to pay off, so Reuven could go and take from the fields that Shimon sold to Levi. But only the field that Shimon sold to Levi after Shimon borrowed the money from Reuven. That's called Meshubodim. And that's only if it says a time in the document. Because if it doesn't say a time in the document, I don't know, maybe the loan happened after Shimon sold the field to Levi, and therefore Reuven can't go and take from Levi the field. But if it says a time in the document, then it says this loan happened in 2020. So you know that any field that Shimon sold after 2020, Reuven could come and claim. So therefore, the part of the Torif that has a time in it has a lot more value. So says the Gemara, you estimate how much is a document, how much is worth a loan with the ability to take from Meshubodim, and that means a loan with a time in it. And how much is a loan worth that you can't claim from Meshubodim? It's worth obviously less because I have less of a security that I'm going to get my money back. And that's the difference between that. That's a split. That's what it means that he takes a turf and he takes a toifus. And says the Gemara, and also the echloiku that we said in the Mishnah, he said, it doesn't mean you cut it into half literally. It also means for the value of it. That if you won't say so, and I'll bring you a raya, that means a value, and therefore also by us, by the star, means a value. That if you won't say so, if you have a talis, if you have a coat, and you cut it into half, you're losing it. It has no value anymore. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. So it must be means when you split the value, you sell it, or one of them pays the other one 50% of the value. So the Gemara, no, that's not proof. Maybe in the Mishnah when it says Yachloiku, it's talking about like a big talis, like the olden days. That's not like a garment with sleeves in and everything. It's just a big piece of cloth, and he cut it into half, and it's valuable for kids. Before it was a talis for adult, and now it's a talis for a child because it's half the size. So he didn't lose the value of it. So you don't have a raya that the Mishnah means for the value. Says the Gemara, Barava said if it was a golden talis, he split it. You want to tell me also over there means you cut it into half, you're going to lose the whole value. It's a golden talis. So I think, well, there's no raya from there. Also over there maybe it means literally split into half. And you know why it don't lose a value? Because the son of a king who's a child could use this golden talus. So therefore, it don't lose a value. Said the Gemara, okay, but it said in the Mishnah that if Oyushnaim Roichvim on a beima, you still say achloiku. So how are you going to cut the beima? You're going to cut it into half? You're going to lose everything. It's a dead behemoth. What's the value? Said the Gemara, very good. You could tell me about a kosher beima. Let's say it's a cow. So you could shecht it and each one gets half the meat. Very good. But if it's a donkey or a not kosher animal, if you split it into half, there's no value for it. So what, you're going to cut it into half and they'll both lose? When it said in the Mishnah achloiku, it doesn't make sense. Elomai, when it says achloiku, it means a value. The Reuben pays Shimon half the value, or Shimon pays Reuben half the value, or they sell it to Levi and they split 50-50 what's the value of it. Therefore, also by shtar, it means to the value of it. It doesn't mean literally that he gets a part of the toifus or the toref to put out the bottle stopper. It means the value that's behind having the part of the time in the shtar. Thank you very, very much.